Good morning, YouTube. Normally I do model car videos, but today I'm going to do a how to fix it, do it yourself thing on my 101 car. I'm having headlight issues and I've already fixed one side of the car, the right side headlight, and now today I'm going to fix the left side headlight. And what it is inside of the plastic housing of the headlight bezel. The wiring harness is dry rotted, and if you go to Mercedes and ask for that wiring harness, they tell you they don't have it. You have to spend $400 for the whole unit. It's pretty expensive. But if you go to popular internet sites, or I should say popular internet auction sites, you can find replacement harnesses that are much better and a better quality, and I will show you that, as well as show you how to get the headlight bezel out, which is kind of crazy, but you can save a lot of money. In my case, it was $800 just in parts alone, whereas now in parts, you know, I'm maybe 60 bucks counting replacing the actual light itself that burns out when the harness shorts out. So I'll talk more about it as I do it, but you've seen the picture of the car I'm going to work on. I'm not a rich guy, despite the car I have. It was a very inexpensive purchase. It's been a real fun car, but it's also required a lot of, you know, maintenance and do-it-yourself type of work. And if I tried to get it done elsewhere, the cost is astronomical. But fortunately for me, I'm kind of handy with things and good at fixing stuff. So I hope you enjoy this video.
Here I have on the car just various tools that I'll be using. Let me try to focus out here. And I'm not going to tell you exactly what sizes and stuff they are. I'll do that as I use the tools in the video, because you know, I'm not even sure if I got the exact right sizes. I might have to go grab another size. But basically, you know, some screwdrivers, a Phillips, you know, torque head wrench for just one little bolt. Here to the left of, right here to the left, is basically things I need to work on the car itself to get the headlight bezel out. And as you can see, it's not a whole lot of stuff. You know, it's tools that most of us have floating around the house anyway, or, you know, from a simple tool kit that we may have. Here to the right, you know, still pretty much simple tools that a lot of us have. I mean, not everyone may have, you know, a wire stripper like this. These are real cheap. It's not fancy, you know, pretty easy to use. And there I have a box of heat shrink tubing of various sizes that didn't cost a whole lot. Heat shrink tubing usually in general is very expensive. And a lighter. What I'm replacing is this wiring harness you see here. This goes inside this plastic housing, and you have the connectors for the different bulbs. As you can see, there here lies the issue. You see the wiring that is, let me get some black behind it, you can see it better. You see the bare wire sticking out, the thin gaugeness of the wire and everything. This car being 10 years old, the shielding has dry rotted, became brittle, and on its own has just cracked off. So, you know, that's a big issue. And of course, when the wires touch, they short out and the bulb blows. And here's the bulb. I believe it's an H7, and this is a personal opinion. I've looked at the auto stores at the various different types of H7 bulbs, ranging anywhere from $13 to $30 a piece, you know. And when I read the back, they're all 55 watt bulbs. So I don't know exactly what the difference is, but they say one will burn brighter than the other. Expensive. I will just simply buy the $13 bulb. Now, we've seen the old wiring harness, which I have here. Now we'll go to the wiring harness that I purchased online at a popular internet auction site. And there are differences, and I'll show you this again when I get the old harness out, because there's pieces from this, the old harness, that were on the ends of the plugs that I had to take from this and add to this, which is no big deal. And as you can see, again, here is the low beam end, and if you compare the two, they are totally different, you know, but it's essentially the same, and it takes no major modifications or hard thinking to get it to work, and it'll work just fine. But if you notice, I'm just going to take this wire and stick it up to the new one, and you can see the differences in the thickness. This wire is a much heavier gauge, and it is wired up a little bit different, and so far on the light that I've fixed, it hasn't made much of a difference. And that is in how the brown wires go. Here you have two brown wires going to the same spot, you know, and here you just have it single, but you have it separate here, but all the brown wires apparently connect together right here and then into the thing, whereas here, you know, they have two here and then it connects here, you know, so here they just splice them all in right there. And so, and then here's the little parking light, or the turn signal light bulb, you know. Well, actually, that's a parking bulb. These two wires are for the turn signal. So you can see that I have the hood up, and I just want to point out the screws that need to be removed in order to get the headlight housing out. Unfortunately, because of the styling of this car, you have to loosen up the front bumper. If you were to replace both of them at the same time, you can just drop the whole front bumper, and it's actually not that hard to do, and is done with those few tools I showed you earlier. You know, these two bolts here, you know, those have to come out, and I didn't have to use a lot of strength or force or anything to remove any of these bolts. They all came loose quite easily. But these two bolts here, down here, this one has to come out, and you know, you have to also remove your license plate, you know, this whole holder, and behind, you can't see, but behind my license plate is two screws, and these screws go through the plastic front end, the ABS front piece, and into the steel behind. That's why you have to replace or remove this so that you can actually pull out the front bumper. And also, okay, so now I want to take off these screws, and this is a 5/16 drive, so you know, and again, it's pretty easy. I can do it by hand, and I'm just simply going to take both of these out. See, now I want to remove again this screw here, and it is also, I'm going to use this 5/16, and it just basically screws out pretty easy. Once I can feel that it's loose enough, or that it's undone, that's where I will get my handy dandy magnet and try to grab it out. A little wiggling, the position of my tire to where it faces out to give me more room on the inside. I have a flashlight in there, or whatever you want to call it, a little spotlight, you know, to see better what's happening for the camera. But up here is a bolt, as well as right here, and one there, and one here, and they are size 10. It all fits in there. You have room to turn. I haven't got the panel all the way off because I forgot to tell you about these pop-in panel clips or whatever. Anyway, hard to see. I just simply take the rounded end get something underneath of there like a flathead screwdriver and pop that out. And once you get this centerpiece popped you can actually get, I'll show you here, you know, a skinny needle nose pliers things to get underneath of it and pull it out. I wish I could show you how to do it directly, but obviously there's no room for the camera and it's hard to do it holding a camera. I kind of need both hands. I'm amazed I can show you this, but right here is a Torx head that needs to be removed, and that metal piece that I told you that sandwiched the pieces together is here, that it's in, and it goes all the way down the length of this. But I'll remove that and you can see that piece a lot better. But looking out at the car, going slowly, you know that that Torx head screw is right there. Okay. Alright, the Torx head screw that I'm using right here is a T25, and I'm using a 1/4 inch drive to put it into to break it loose because it is pretty rusty, and you know, but you can still do it by hand. You don't need to have any hardcore powerful tools, but it's a T25 Torx head screw to get that. Alright, now I got the screw out. That's what it looks like once it's out, and it's a little rusty. I don't think it needs replaced. I might clean it up a little bit and put some white lithium or something on there to keep it from rusting in the future. Now on the inside, you know, this piece right here, I'm going to pop that out, and I'm simply just going to take a screwdriver right here on this end, gently pry it outward or towards the inside of the car, and then pull it back towards the back of the car. Okay, here's that piece I was talking about. Right here is the hole where this screw went into from the bottom. So this is facing up, and when you remove this, when you essentially, if it's in the fender like so and it's sandwiching them, you basically just, this end moves out just slightly, less than 1/2 inch, and then you pull it. And the reason why is in the body panel, in the fender and the bumper, there's a groove that this slides in, and you actually are pulling that out of the groove. And you know, I don't know if it's because this car's been worked on before, but right here I don't see any bolts that held anything up right here. I don't know if it's even necessary or if this is a part that's used for multiple cars, but the only one that I have found is this. And you know, if you pay attention to this pin, then you know, make a note of that pin. What I did on the other side is I, not too much but very slightly, pulled this end apart just a hair to give it more flexibility to go in, maintaining the tightness of the rest of this link so it will continue to hold this body panel here together, because you see without it, it's quite loose. It's still held up there pretty good, but now the hard part is that what sucks is we can't see it, but there is right about here on the inside, mounted to the light, a round socket like thing, and this bumper has a slot, a forked slot that goes on that, and that keeps it from, you know, that's what's holding this up. And that's why you have to take this whole bumper part loose, because this is actually attached to this light, and that you also have to pull it down so that the body features of this car right here, which goes up into the housing, because there's more of this housing below, you have to actually have this loose to get to it, and it still seems pretty tight, and you have to get a little rough with it to pop it out. And I don't know if I can do it with one hand and show you what I mean, but you're basically going to try to pull it forward. Just like, see how I just pulled that forward? I pulled it forward towards me. And boy, that's a lot of wetness. Pull it forward and as much as you can. And now, right here, where my finger is, you see these, so I wish I had a cameraman. You can see that deal I'm talking about. And right here, where my finger's tapping, that's the little forky thing I'm talking about that goes in this groove. And I'll show you that better once we, and then get that off. Here on the fender, you see this little groove here, or on the bumper, this little fender groove here, there's a matching groove on the fender here. Pin, and that's where this tapping goes. With this tap, what is it is that in scratching the groove are, and it looks like you're doing it this groove. But when you try easy do it way with limited bass, it's actually very hard. So that little notch there, that little pin or whatever you want to call it, actually guides through here, and then everything pushes back, and you can see, you know, that it goes to here. And what's funny is because when you look at this mounting bracket and that mounting bracket, you can see where it's been molded for holes, but it's not. So it's a solid piece, so there's no way you can mold, you know. So anyway, with that pulled out, we can now loosen up the bolts for the light. And one of them is this bolt here. And I had to use a hand wrench to get to it, and I believe it's a number 10. I don't know if I can pull it down enough. Maybe I forgot a bolt or something. You know, I don't know if I forgot something underneath, but I thought this pulled down a lot more. But yeah, well, I'm going to take this bolt out right there, and then the other two bolts is this one here, and I thought there was another one. Stand up here. And there's this one here. We have this one to take off, and that one to take off. Here, and again, this one. Okay, here's this piece removed, and it turned out that this is an 8, and I went ahead and used a nut driver to get that loose. I was able to pull this down enough. See the hole it came out of to get a number 8 nut driver in there to loosen this up. Now note is this also adjusts the position of the light. When you put it back in, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's quite a bit of space to move. And now that I've removed it, obviously the light moves quite a bit. And when you put that back together, you want to make sure this is up flush here, and then tighten it down. Don't just tighten it down, because you'll end up with, you know, the body panel not quite right, and then also look weird with the hood. So make sure that's pulled up, you know, and everything's flush. Okay, the trick to getting this out, I've removed this screw and this screw here. Here's the screw that went there and the screw that goes there. Now to get this out, you literally need to pull this end out first, because of the fender here grabs it here. So you want to pull this down and pull this out. See, I wish I had 4 hands or a cameraman, but if you pull this a little bit and try to reach down here, yeah, see, I have to put the camera down to do it, but this end comes out first, and then it comes out in a motion like this, not out like that, but a motion out like this. Here I have it partially out. This here was here. I have it partially out so you can see what I'm saying. It's still in the thing, and then it just easily pops out. You know, you still have the wiring harness to unplug, and it's easier when it's this far out. Here's the wiring harness. You just simply have to work it back and forth to get it off, but again, it's something that takes 2 hands. So I'll unplug that, and then I'll show you how to get the old wiring harness out. Okay, here we have the headlight assembly off. This is the back that faces the inside of the car. Right here is where the harness plugged in. This and this, especially that, these two, or especially this one, I'm sorry, you don't really need to fool with those. This one, I believe, adjusts the angle of the inside of the headlight, changing the the positioning of the beam of your light as it projects forward into the world. And this one here is you move that in order to change the bulb on the inside. So you can remove this, and there's the bulb. As you can see, I might want to buy me some bulb works, but as you can see, all the orange is kind of come off, so it probably wouldn't hurt to buy another bulb that has fresh orange coating on there. And now I got orange stuff all on the inside floating around there, which will come out. And then you take off your light covers. Usually it's not so chaotic because you're using two hands. But here's the light covers. To replace the harness, I'm simply going to start by twisting the lights out. And as you can see, here you have a set screw and you have an opening, a recess spot here. So when you turn this, you want to try to grab the light and this little metal clip here. Get your fingers as close down as you can and turn it, just enough, and it pops out. You can see that bulb is bad. It's all burned up. But if you see here how this end is sharper, or it's more pointed, that's because the light, when you put it in, you see this groove slides in here, and then pushing down, not real hard obviously because it ain't going to go anywhere, you turn it to where it all fits underneath these little metal screws. And if you don't, the light will simply come off as you're going down the road and fall out. Turn that to where it comes out. Obviously this bulb, which is the high beam bulb, is good. So I want to try to be careful. I'm going to pull that out here in a minute. And then also you see right there is the parking light, and that simply just pulls right on out. My hand, see, it didn't pull, it just pulled straight out. There's nothing really holding that in, so it's pulled straight out. And there we have it. And so that's how you disconnect the lights. The only thing you have left now is right here is the turn signal light. You have two wires. You have a green wire that goes to it, which is buried here, and this brown wire. And you want to, I'm going to end up clipping the wires whenever I get the harness out. The next trick is getting this plug out. Okay, here we are again with getting this plug out, and I've found using pieces of zip tie is actually pretty easy. If you look, you can see that there are two tabs. Maybe I should go get the other wiring harness and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so we have the new wiring harness, which the end is the same as the old one. And you have these two flaps here that actually lock it into place. And what I want to do is, these teeth you see through here, I'm going to run my zip ties. I want to force them down in there to where it pushes these away from the body. And that way I can push it out. And then here on the other side, you have one large thick one, which I'm going to use this little screwdriver for to push down in and hold that back, and then I'll use another little screwdriver to push up against the piece itself down. So to show you what I'm talking about, I have here a piece of zip tie, You know, I've looked at my old piece, I've seen where that is. I'm going to force that down in there as far as it'll go. And then I have another piece of zip tie, which is actually the same zip tie, I just cut it in half. And I'm going to push that in as far as it'll go. And you see the positions that I have them in. Okay, now I'm going to get this little screwdriver and I want to stick it in that side. And I might have to find me another zip tie because this isn't panning out. Okay, I just heard a little click, and now I'm going to take this screwdriver, and where these teeth are, somewhere up on it itself, I'm going to push straight down. And see if I can do this one-handed. Well, I'm going to have to use two hands, so I'm going to show you what it's like when it's out. But that's the trick. A couple of zip ties to hold the ends down. Maybe if you had a skinnier piece of metal that was wider, you could put on this end where the screwdriver is and it would work better. But this is what I got. Okay, I've got the plug out, and actually I went and got another zip tie, a thicker one, right here to put in place of the screwdriver, and it popped out very easily. So maybe rather than trying to force a screwdriver, just get 3 zip ties or thin metal that'll make it easy. It slid right on out, but you can see the end of the harness there, and it came out. I wanted to show you how to remove the bulbs from their little housing. I'm going to try to do this with one hand. Basically what I do, because like this bulb is still good and I don't want to ruin it. The other bulb was bad and you can just grab it and wiggle it out. But the thing with any kind of bulb, and you should think about, when you touch the bulb with your fingers, you have dirt and oil and all that will get on the bulb. And the oil and dirt dissipates heat differently on the glass, and it'll actually make your bulb burn out. Interesting thing I should mention about these bulbs that I should have at the beginning of the video. Believe it or not, both bulbs, the high beam and the low beam, are H7 bulbs. There's no difference between the two. So if you're one of those people like me that keeps, you know, a little first aid kit in their car for their car, it's good to have at least 2 H7 bulbs, because whether it's your high beam or low beam that goes out, you can swap the two. If you're going down the road and it's nighttime and you don't have a place to buy bulbs, you can, and you have a headlight that goes out, you can simply take the high beam bulb and put in the low beam bulb's place, although you will not have that high beam working. But that's a quick emergency fix for your low beams, for your headlights if you have one. Okay, before I pull this harness out, on these clips here, especially the high beam side, the low beam side you don't have to worry about right now, I'm going to go ahead and take these clips off, because if I take them off now, everything feeds back through this housing a lot easier, and it's easier to pull out and you don't risk damaging this. An interesting thing I just noticed, it's kind of funny, is when I mentioned earlier about how to properly put the bulb in place, the importance of that, because you see here on this housing, this funny little mountain. It doesn't come from the factory that way. That comes directly from the bulb not being put in properly, falling down, and the heat of the bulb actually melting the inside. And you know, you can see here that hole. That isn't a factory thing. That's from the bulb heating up and melting that. You know, it's kind of comical in a way, but then it's not, especially when you consider how much this car may have cost new and the investment someone put into it. You know, that could be a potential fire hazard. You know, it's just your headlight bulb falling down. Sure, this melted, and I'm sure they smelt it burning, so they stopped and checked it out. But if this would have caught on fire and this plastic started burning and caught the wiring, who knows what may have happened. You could have had a fire under the hood, and whew, that may not have been a good thing. But so, we simply, all you have to do to take these clips off is pull this plastic, this little metal part back here, and you see I just did it that simply with my fingernail, which I don't have much of,
and
so
save
it's not that hard. That piece you need, and if they're corroded and bad and all that, you can also now these. That I have that clip off. All you have to do is simply feed this back through to the other. Feed this wiring harness back out to the other side. Let me get the harness out most of the way, and then I'll show you how I cut and splice into the turn signal wires, because in order to get this socket out, I'm assuming you would have to take apart the front plastic cover, and they're glued on. I mean, this black rubber shield comes off easy, but this plastic thing is glued on and sealed for so the weather doesn't get in there. And from my experience with other headlight assemblies, you ain't getting that off. So I'm not even going to attempt to try to remove this plug or anything. I'm just going to simply snip the wiring going to it, with plenty of length, extra length, and do it that way. And just use extra shielding, some heat treatment tubing to hopefully protect it, so in the future it doesn't. And where I'm lucky is even though the wire, I caught it right away, the wire itself is not corroded, just the shielding is rotting off. Okay, now to talk about the wires I want to clip. Again, I said about this socket, I don't want to take it out. You have this green wire that goes to it and this brown wire. And what I want to do is give as much room as I can. I want as much of this original wire as possible. If you cut it too short, you're not going to be able to splice into it. Obviously, right here on the green wire, you can tell where the shielding is gone bad. So I'm going to clip it just right at that bad spot. And I know what you're thinking, the wire is bad, you're going to have issues. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run heat shrink tube down the length of it. And when I splice it together, I'm going to have heat shrink tubing all the way on this. And I'm going to do the same with the new wiring harness. And you can see here's where the green is and here's where the brown is. And when you follow them, they come off, they have these wonderful little ends. Now these wonderful ends are made to go into here. But again, I will say, unless somebody figures it out, I don't know how to get those ends in there to replace. And I'm not going to attempt to try to separate this stuff. To me, it's not worth the effort. I'll just splice into it. I'll just simply cut these off here at the ends, as close to the end as possible, and then tie it to this green to that green and this brown to that brown. And that's what's cool about this wiring harness, is the colors are right, so it's no crazy feat. Okay, so like I said, I want to simply take my side cutters. I like side cutters, but you don't have to use side cutters. And then you can use that little fancy tool I showed earlier, but I like side cutters. And I'll just cut this. I'm going to cut it right here because that's long enough. Go ahead and give it a cut. And now the old wiring harness has been removed. And just real quick, it looks good until you see little cracks like this. Let me get in focus here. Dang it. Okay, see where my finger is? There's actually a crack there. You could see the coloration. If you look at the area where the sockets are for the lights, there's all kinds of bare wire showing. And in seeing this, it makes you think about preventive measures. When you put in your new bulbs, when you replace bulbs, don't grab the wires. Okay? Grab the plastic housing and part of the metal clip like so. You know, and to a lot of us that sounds, you know, why are you saying the obvious? Well, not all of us are, you know, mechanically inclined or bulb changers, and you tend to start pulling on wires or what have you, and that could be part of the reason why this is so bad. When you change your bulb, and I showed it earlier, but I guess that didn't show good enough, because when I reviewed the video, right here, let's get this into focus. This little pointed end is what goes underneath those lugs right here, you know, and it slides this way, and then this little metal part, I'll get it, the top of this little metal piece actually rides underneath that metal lug, locking the light into place. And it could be difficult, I guess, to turn it in and out, but you want to hold on to the plastic parts and the metal part here, and not the wires itself, because the wires are rather sensitive, and I don't care what quality they are. Wires are not meant to be twisted and pulled and all that. Okay, real quick, I've taken my heat shrink tubing. I've already cut off the ends, you know, these little ends off of the new wiring harness, but I've taken, before I start trimming the wire, heat shrink tubing and put over the wire, and just slide it on there down so it's out of the way. I've done it to both sides, and then also I've done the same thing. Okay, real quick, I figured I might want to show this to you. I've already spliced the wires together and just basically slid the heat shrink tubing over the splice. Now, I didn't run it to the middle. I run it to where the splice is here. So now that I have that there, I'm going to take my lighter, and you have to be careful. You don't want to get it too hot. You want to get it just right, you know. You don't need the flame directly on there. I start in the middle, or where the splice is, and gently just go over it. It's okay to stop and let it cool off a little bit, you know. Just, you don't want to get it too hot. Switch places, you know. Try to see, I'm trying to show you something, I'm not even on the video, but just very lightly. It doesn't have to be a lot, and you see that's just right. It's already cool. And the reason why you don't want to go too much is because the heat shrink tubing will melt to the point to where, you know, the metal will actually show through, and that's not what you want to do. So you just get it enough to where it shrinks down on there and does a seal on both ends. Now, there are other tricks to keep it more watertight, but what you have to realize is it's going to be in a watertight compartment. And then basically what I'm going to do now is, all this heat tubing is for is to be extra insulation to this wire, because it's old, it's 10 years old, and you know, to help keep, you know, if it starts to crack and break up, provide insulation to where it won't, you know, short out. And then again, I'm simply going to take my lighter. A heat gun can work too, but can be kind of precarious. And you can see I'm not spending a lot of time in one spot. You don't need to. Just enough to get it to shrink a little bit on there. You know, it's easier if you move it around and you use both hands. I don't suggest trying to do this one-handed unless you only have one hand. But especially on this, it doesn't have to be perfectly sealed around there, because I'm just using it as an outer protectant, as a shielding, rather than trying to seal up. But see, here we go. It's on there. You know, I didn't get it hot, so I can touch it right away. It's not burning my fingers, and that's kind of what you want. You just want to get it warm enough to where it shrinks, but not so hot to where it burns to the touch. Okay, and that's my splice. You know, you can see where my finger is. That's where the actual splice is, and you want to kind of feel around there. You don't want to wiggle it, but feel around there to make sure that there's nothing, you know, no bare wiring or anything sticking out that could short out later. You could also take, for extra protection, some regular electrical tape and go over the top of this, you know, to further protect it. But heat shrink tubing is a wonderful thing, and not only does it, you know, it makes a good weather barrier too, moisture barrier. So that's how
here we go.
splicing them together. Now, I've got the harness in. The only thing that I've done differently than on routing the harness than on the original, this harness is a little shorter. So if I go around the adjustment thing and into the clip, this sucker, this end actually only comes out to about here, and there's, you know, that would make it hard to change the bulb. So what I did is I ran it on the other side of all that stuff. Instead of going up above, I went down below, and this gives me a lot more room to change a bulb. And here you see I already plugged in the parking light plug, you know. It seems a little loose. I may see what I can do to tighten it up a little bit. But they just push it anyway. I want to show you now about the clips. Now, on the original Mercedes part of the wiring harness, if you remember, this part of the clip here actually clipped onto the housing or onto the plug itself, and here it doesn't, which is no big deal, because actually what would hold everything in is the pressure you have between these points. When I put that clamp on, it just slides over. It doesn't clip because there's no thing there for clipping, but it works just the same. And you know, everything, the bulb itself will hold it in here, and then okay. So that's the bulb put in. Focus here. And you can see where this end sticks up here along the side of that groove, and the other 2 points that stuck in actually go around the inside of the light. And then simply to put the light in, again you look for this pointed end here, and you find the recessed end, and using both hands you just simply twist it in. Okay, so now that bulb is in correctly. You see where the prong is underneath the lugs on both sides. Everything's in there nice and snug. This is snug, and that is what that is like when it's finished. And then we just repeat the same for the other side.